Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios on this beautiful day here in Old New Orleans. Hope you're out there enjoying it. Of course, it is a little bit hot outside, right? It is June. And of course, we are now live streaming on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. So those of you that have to maybe leave the television, hey, just put us on your tablet, your smartphone. You won't miss a minute of today's program. Today on the show, we'll cover all the home teams: Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, UNO. We'll look at college baseball, professional football. We'll talk a little bit about college football as well. And to break it down for us, one of the best we have in the entire city. He does it for CrescentCitySports.com. He does it for All Access on 106.1. Jude Young joins us on the program. Jude, how are you today?
I'm great. It is a beautiful day, great time of year, and as we get closer and closer to normal, pretty close now.
Yes.
It's exciting to look ahead to coming up football season right around the corner on all levels, but get a little break before that. Although LSU baseball is trying to cut into that break, aren't they?
It's always good. I tell you what, I was talking about the other day on a radio show. We're spoiled, right? For the Bertman years. It's a rite of passage. Well, in the summertime, you're waiting for LSU to and not just LSU. Let's UNO was the first team to go into a College World Series under Maestri, and then of course what Rick Jones did at Tulane, but also again what Bertman did at LSU. We're spoiled here. We expect College World Series. We expect postseason baseball,
and it's become a college baseball state as a result. Programs invest in their resources to try to win, and there's a lot of talent on the high school level, the talent that doesn't go pro early on. They're playing college baseball at programs all around the state. You saw what Louisiana Tech did this year, but in the end this year, what do you see? LSU baseball alive and well and competing in a super regional. So yeah, we're spoiled because we're used to seeing it. It's so heavily expected that when we get into the coaching search talk, it'll pay well, but it's a tough job to take because the expectations are through the roof.
Yep, no doubt about it. We'll get into that in our second block this afternoon. Let's talk Saints first, out the box here. Wait, before we do that, let me do the right thing. Tell us about CrescentCitySports.com. Tell us about your radio show.
Well, we cover it all at CrescentCitySports.com. You name it, high school, college, and the pros. We're following this LSU story. We're getting you ready for high school football season already with in-depth previews, getting with the high school coaches, not only local but major programs around the state, so you can keep up with that all summer long, leading to kickoff in September. And of course, Saints mini camp this week, leading up to training camp. We're doing previews of position groups coming up throughout the summer, so you'll be prepared for training camp. And we're keeping our eyes on the Pelicans as well because it's a huge offseason for them. One would think some significant moves will have to come if they're going to start winning and getting into the playoffs. We're covering it all at Crescent City Sports.
And of course, you got to catch him on his radio show as well.
On Tuesday nights normally for me, but sometimes others, as Ken Trahan and I handle All Access right after Eric Asher, 6 o'clock every weekday on Nash Icon 106.1 FM.
As knowledgeable as there is in this town, no doubt about it. All right, let's start off with the Saints. They were looking for some money, and they found it, and we figured it was going to happen. The guy that they restructured was the guy that I didn't think it would happen with, but after they did it, it made sense. Lattimore restructured his $10.2 million fifth-year option. He took a $990,000 base salary. The rest of it is in a signing bonus. Now, for the Saints, it worked out well because they were able to sign their draft class.
Right.
All right? For Lattimore, it works out well because he's in a situation now where the NFL is only going to be able to fine him on his base salary, which is $990,000. If they take game checks away, they're not going to be taking away millions. They're going to be taking away thousands. And then for him, that works out for him. Now, of course, the salary was converted to 4 voidable years. It looks like it's $120 million on paper, but it really, again, it's just, a 1-year deal that allows the Saints to be able to have some type of wiggle room in terms of the cap. They still need money to be able to sign some free agents out there, but let's take Lattimore first. You know what's interesting about his comments the other day, and I'm not surprised by him, but he said it. I'm the best cornerback in the NFL. And I'm sure when they're at that table right now negotiating, they're negotiating him as the best cornerback in the NFL.
But he also said that this past season wasn't his best.
That's
he
true.
can do better. He needs to improve. So I think he hedged his comments pretty well there, and making this deal with the Saints, as you mentioned, made a ton of sense for him and clearly was needed by the team. Look, at this point, he has clouded his future and affected his value because of the Cleveland incident off the field. He knows it. His agent knows it. It was easy to help the team short term. He benefits short term. And at the same time, I think he'd like to rebuild his value by getting this case out of the way. As you mentioned, find out what the league is going to do about it. And maybe he won't be somebody who's signed to a long-term contract until after the season. It's very possible. But there were only really 2 major candidates, I think, to be guys who could open up some salary cap room. Some say 3, but I really say 2, because when you have Marcus Williams on a franchise tag, that's a little different than having somebody, or in this case 2 players, at the end of their first-round pick rookie deals, the other being Ryan Ramczyk along with Lattimore. Ramczyk doesn't have anything clouding his value or his future. He probably is the best right tackle in the league, and he could potentially play left tackle like he did early in his rookie year for the Saints. He knows it. The team knows it. His representation understands that. So that's a tough negotiation. And trying to figure out the future as far as what top market value is for right tackle now, we know what that is roughly, but what's it going to be in a couple of years when that big TV money kicks in and the salary cap shoots up?
Right.
That's the big question. So the Saints and Ramczyk's side have to come to an understanding of what's reasonable, because his contract should definitely set the market for right tackles, but will also potentially, well, we don't know about Teron Armstead long-term in the last year of his deal,
This is the last year of his deal, right.
And who says Ramczyk won't kick over to the left side? I think he's capable of doing it. So he might want to be paid more like a left tackle because of that value. I don't think he's looking to leave the New Orleans Saints, but at the same time, there are a lot of complications there that make it a long negotiation. But if anybody can get the job done, it's Mickey Loomis. He's so young, what, 26? You can give a tackle a long-term deal and still be getting value out of him into his 30s. So I think he's going to get a major contract in the end from the Saints, but it's going to take some time. And the players' union in the NFL as well, they want this to be done the right way because, again, it's going to be a market-setting type of contract.
There's no doubt. And for the Saints, as you mentioned, this is a tough negotiation because if I'm his agent, I'm looking at the tea leaves. I'm seeing Teron Armstead getting a little bit older. I'm seeing him in a situation where this is the last year of his deal. There's no guarantee Teron Armstead is coming back. Yeah, you'd like to think the Saints are going to be able to hold on to him. But before they do that deal, they got to get this deal done. So I'm going there negotiating that I'm a left tackle. This is your future left tackle. He may be playing the right. He may be the best right tackle in football, but he's going to be your left tackle eventually, and that's what I want to be paid as.
Right, and I'm not reading too much into a 6th round pick, but the Saints did move up in the 6th round to take somebody that they project as a right tackle in Landon Young out of Kentucky.
Right.
He played left tackle his entire career at Kentucky and was a highly rated recruit, but a lot of his story, his scouting report, reads like Zach Strief, who you bring in and develop. He played left tackle at Northwestern, wound up at right tackle for a long time, and budgeting-wise, not having to pay 2 huge salaries to both of your tackles makes a lot of sense. So when I saw that, it made me think maybe this is a deal where if they do come to a deal with Ramczyk, he winds up on the left side next season.
Let's talk about Lattimore here for a moment. And is it in his best interest, because of the arrest, because of everything that's thrown around him, that maybe it hurts his value a bit, to maybe, be in a situation where they force the Saints to put the franchise tag on him next year and then negotiate from there?
Right. I mean, I could easily see that happen, because at this point, the only way he's going to be able to build his value up to where he sees it as best of the best at his position, why not come back this year, stay out of issues off the field, and play great football? It makes too much sense. It doesn't have to be a deal where the Saints come up with something with him now because of the tagging potential, because they got the renegotiation they needed short term, because it's all about squeezing in dollars, opening up the chances for a free agent this year. That's been done, so that really takes that off the Saints' plate as far as a major issue, and really works for Lattimore because of everything we've talked about.
24 free agents next year right now. And I'll just go through the list very, very quickly for the audience. Lattimore, Ramczyk, Armstead, Davenport, Marcus Williams, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Patrick Robinson, P.J. Williams, Traquan Smith, Montgomery, Washington, both running backs, Spence and Armah, the new fullback they had. As far as restricted agents, free agents, Deontay Harris, Tuttle, Chase Hansen, Jawan Johnson just been moved to the tight end position, Garrett Griffin, Greenwich, Dalton, Kelly, and Dow. And, again, you look at those restricted free agents, it is what it is.
Right.
The big ones are, again, the unrestricted free agents. Remember, you also have to pay a quarterback next year.
Correct.
Okay, and you have to re-sign. If you're not going to move Ramczyk to the left side, you have to re-sign Teron Armstead.
Right.
They got their work cut out for them with just a $208 million ceiling on next year's salary cap.
Right. I'm not saying that Teron Armstead's out the door.
Neither
but
am I.
It really does seem like it's going to be hard for the Saints to make it work, because they've got to wait one more season to get to 2023 in order to really be freed up with the salary cap a lot more. They're paying for not the sins of the past, but for mortgaging the future to try to win now.
I agree with that.
They knew it was going to come. Now they've got to deal with it, and the one issue that complicates it, that's going to affect even the best long-term planning like this front office is able to do, is they don't know who the quarterback's going to be and how much that position overall is going to cost. We can get into that debate. Everybody's talking about it. If it's not one of these two guys that are competing for the job right now, okay, you're talking about more than likely making a major trade, which is going to cost you even more assets, including draft capital, which is cheap labor.
Yes.
Or you're going to be winding up drafting a rookie and start over mode. So they may say that they don't think that's going to happen, and you hear it from Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. They still really like their roster. They like their roster. Both of them have said more than maybe outsiders do. But if it doesn't work out at quarterback, it's not going to work out in the one-loss record, and it's going to put all of your key players, your marquee talent, and they still have plenty, a year older. And at some point you got to think, well, maybe this is the time to start over. So this season means a lot, even though it feels like just a transition year, because quarterback's going to be so important. It means a lot how successful both Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are, because if they're not, then the Saints have to consider some things that I don't think they want to at this point.
I would 100% agree. You made a point that I think is a valid point going forward. And of course, the way they structure these deals. Because we're going to see the salary cap balloon in the next few years, again, if a player wants to be here, you can set up this contract so it's not really hurting you in terms of a cap hit, maybe over the first 2 years of the deal. A guy like Teron Armstead, who maybe doesn't want to go play somewhere else, may say to himself, look, I'm willing to be able to take less money the first couple of years and to be able to get it ballooned on the back end. Now, again, that's taking a chance because, look, he's not old by any stretch, especially by tackle, years. But, there's an opportunity like what we're seeing right now with Cam Jordan. His contract is ballooned to the point that if he's not going to continue to be productive, then at that point, again, this team's got to make some real big decisions and be able to eat a lot of dead money here.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see, again, how they play this going forward, because they got their eye now on this new TV deal, which is going to expand the salary cap and going to have a lot more money for them. Plus, as you mentioned, mortgage in the future, they'll be out of that in a couple of years from now as well.
Correct, and there's a big difference when you talk about those key players that you have to pay between the guys who are in their 20s, especially mid-20s like Lattimore and Ramczyk, versus guys like Cam Jordan and Teron Armstead in their 30s. Now, it seems like Jordan, even though he doesn't want to discuss it, had a down year for him because he was dealing with some sort of core injury that really affected his strength, which his power is a big part of his game. I think you get a good bounce back year from him, and he takes care of himself. He's got a lot, I think, left in the tank.
And he plays through injury.
Correct. So at the same time, you laid it out pretty clearly. This is a team that is going to have to figure out exactly who they value and why. And the younger guys are so much easier to give deals. It's not like Drew Brees, where a quarterback can play into his 40s now, and you could play that game later into his career. You can at most other positions. So the Saints are going to have to figure out how to pay the young guys, and that's why I'll say it again, Ramczyk and Lattimore as well, when that big negotiation really kicks in. Setting the market there for their positions, once you figure that out, it's going to be a big number at the end of that deal, but at least it'll be a long-term deal, so you can have the wiggle room early, and the cap's only going to go up, barring the unforeseen again. And again, the Saints can't worry about that. You got to hope it's a once in a lifetime, in a generation, and centuries type of issue, like the pandemic.
Let's do centuries.
Correct. All for that. But again, I think it's going to wind up working out well, that they're going to get these young guys signed, including Marcus Williams, and they're going to be able to have that flexibility. But again, I just go back to quarterback. How much are you paying a quarterback? I don't think you're paying either of the two guys competing for the job now if they're not really good. I don't think they're going to pay for average out of the two, whoever the winner, the best guy is. So they're either going to be paying big money, or they're going to have to figure that out as far as, again, if you go with a rookie quarterback, it's smart because it opens up everything else to pay your football team, but you got to be right, because now rookie quarterbacks are expected to be good on their rookie deal. So again, it's hard to estimate, because they probably have a plan with quarterback working out. I'm guessing Winston, most people are. Cam Jordan publicly sounds like, without being direct, pretty indirectly, they're expecting Winston to be the guy, but we don't know how much of a winner he can really be, despite the seemingly highly productive change in his maturity and his focus on trying to be great.
Let's talk about that for a moment. When you look at the two quarterbacks, just so different in what they do, what their attributes are. It's a change in offense. Now, again, I know Peyton was asked about that this week a little bit, but I mean, if you've got Winston on the field, you're going to be more of a vertical team. Whereas, again, if Taysom's on the field, you're going to run the ball more, okay, with your quarterback. It's just they're so vastly different in terms of things that they do well. It's interesting to see, again, how they're going to play this, because is this going to be a situation where Winston starts, but yet we're still going to see maybe, again, Taysom coming in, playing a little bit of quarterback, jack of all trades, like we saw again with Brees at times? Or will it be a situation where, again, Winston's the quarterback, and we really won't see Taysom at all, except maybe in a backup role? It'd be interesting again how this is going to play out. How do you think it does?
Well, I think it's going to be, the biggest playbook the Saints have ever had on the offensive side of the ball, because you really are installing two different offenses.
Exactly.
And they understand that. At the same time, once you pick the guy, you can move forward and know if you have to switch for any reason, you'll have prepared in the offseason, training camp, preseason for that. And there's really not that much I think Sean Payton has to do on the Taysom Hill side, which is kind of interesting. He's the more versatile dual threat quarterback, but I think every way that Payton wants to handle him has already been there and been installed and incrementally been looked at least behind the scenes. We haven't seen it all yet, obviously, on the field. But it's more interesting on the Winston side, because unlike Taysom, who showed a little bit of that game manager quality, he was a lot more comfortable than anybody would have ever expected running more of a Drew Brees style offense in his 4 starts last year. until I see it, I don't know if Winston can do that. He's much more of a risk taker. He says he's now comfortable with the idea. I need to check down more. I need to take what's there. But until we see it, we don't know if that's going to work out. And you are wasting his arm talent if you aren't looking to expose teams more now that you can with Winston rather than Brees, intermediate and deep routes.
More vertical.
Right. So we're going to see more of that in more situations because it's all about game planning based on what you're going to see, being able to take advantage of what the arm talent can do. But I think that'll work out fine. It's going to come down to the players executing and proving that they're ready to be starting quarterbacks. We've seen it from Winston before, not good enough. We've seen very little of Taysom. But the one thing we know about Taysom, if he somehow wins the job or if he has to take over the job for whatever reason during the season, he's going to run a whole lot more than what we saw as a fill-in for Drew Brees. So there's no way that the Saints, over now a 17-game schedule, can expect to be successful enough to be a playoff team.
If it is a situation with Taysom, how does that affect Kamara?
Well, I don't think it's really going to hurt Kamara that much. And you can talk about the two other stars on the offense that are still here, the true top-notch stars, Kamara and, of course, Michael Thomas. Those guys still got their touches. They, if anything, Kamara is going to be leaned upon even more heavily, I believe, if it's Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston, because Winston's going to be able to back off defenses and do more with his arm, even if he's making those mistakes that you don't want to live with. He's going to try to, and at times, make more plays down the field. I think the stars in the offense are going to get theirs, and they're going to be just fine. And if anything, Michael Thomas, from what he was able to get from Taysom Hill as a quarterback, back healthy at that time, his targets were through the roof. So he may be rooting for Taysom Hill at this point, as opposed to many of his teammates who may be thinking the other way, going with the higher talent level and somebody who's actually done it in the league.
Well, you think about it. Again, I mentioned this on the radio show the other day. The receivers on this team, they've never been in a situation where they got a quarterback that can go vertical. We remember Brees going vertical, but a lot of these guys never were in a situation where they had a guy like what Winston said this week, just keep running. He was talking about Traquan Smith. Again, I'm going to throw the deep ball. I can air it out 60, 70 yards. But Brees didn't have that here in New Orleans, in the latter years, but still was a very, very successful quarterback. And again, just taking what the defense had given him. Ruiz is going to stay at guard. Are you surprised?
I'm not, because it came down to Eric McCoy being so good at center that they don't want to upset the apple cart. They believe they can get more out of Ruiz, who at the very end of last season I think showed those signs of improvement. Here's a guy who was playing almost exclusively center and was a great college center at Michigan, who was asked to come in with the weirdest offseason in NFL history, not getting those reps, and now you're playing a different position in the National Football League. So obviously he struggled. I think that they believe he's going to be at least a very good guard. You don't take a guy in the first round if you don't think he offers. I don't think you ever take a center, although we have seen it. I don't think you should take a center exclusively in the first round of the draft. I don't care how good he is. So they had to be thinking in their minds that he could play guard too, and it wound up being beneficial for him to do that, so they wouldn't have to make more changes, having McCoy suddenly have to learn another position as well with a rookie at center. It just worked out so well that McCoy is so good and continues to improve that it doesn't surprise me a bit. But at the same time, they might experiment more once training camp comes along, and maybe McCoy shows that he's just such a good lineman on the interior, period, that they go, this might be easier for Ruiz now, especially because it's not Drew Brees you're asking to make another change at center in his final year trying to win a Super Bowl. You might be much more comfortable doing it with new quarterbacks battling for it.
Zach Bond spoke to the media this week, said an injured hamstring in camp last year, which slowed his progress down. He's going to be moving now to the will linebacker for the Sam. Talk about that. Do you think he works at the will linebacker?
I think the Saints might have made a miscalculation with Bond, and here's why. They thought of him a lot like a guy who's already developed out of the same situation from the same school, Joe Schobert, out of Wisconsin. But he was taken by a team in Cleveland that wasn't good, so they could deal with the growing pains of not seeing the field regularly a rookie year, then throwing him out there to the Wolves and having him start as an off-the-ball linebacker after playing on the edge in more of a three-man front type of scheme. Now you really can't do that. Again, the Saints aren't forfeiting anything this year. They feel like they're in transition, but they're not rebuilding. That's why they drafted Pete Werner, or they were willing to draft him on the board at that time in the second round. I think that Vaughn's going to have to show a whole lot to beat a guy who's been playing linebacker at the major college level, and you know he can do it and understands the role. So it does hurt the Saints. I think they might try to incorporate him a little bit more on the edge. Certain matchups where his size and his quickness and being able to bend the edge versus these larger defensive ends might be an advantage. But I would be surprised if both players are healthy, if Vaughn beats out Werner. In a National Football League these days where you're really only playing two linebackers, basically 80-85% of the time. That's why he was moved from Sam, because you at least want to get your best talent on the field, have him and Werner compete. If one gets hurt, the other plays, and Demario Davis obviously isn't leaving the field at all.
Right, no doubt. Trey Kirkpatrick comes in this week for a visit. He made $1.5 million last year with the Arizona Cardinals. Minimal deal for a veteran. A guy that, again, played... had 3 interceptions last year, 58 tackles. Played most of his career with the Cincinnati Bengals. Some question his speed,
right?
Which again, and also again, he is a more physical corner, much like Janoris Jenkins, but maybe doesn't have the speed of a Jenkins.
Right.
Your thoughts on him? Look, it's slim pickings out there right now when you talk about free agent corners.
Sure, but it's not that bad of a market necessarily, because I think Rashad Breeland.
Right, which I don't understand why he is not even, we haven't heard his name mentioned yet, and I think he's the best corner on the board.
It's interesting because I think he is too. But with Kansas City, here's a guy, and you look at his and the analytics. How real are they when you don't know what he's being asked to do in a role on a defense? Because you know one thing, the Chiefs didn't sign him back. But you do know the analytics tell you that he was good at not allowing the big play, but he seems to play on the conservative end of things as far as giving up short routes and those type of passes. So you don't pay big money for a guy who likes to play it safe necessarily at that position. And if you think you can get a guy, at least for 1 year in Kirkpatrick, who can fill in, who can play it safe for you, that's what you want to do versus paying more money. And I think Breeland's looking for a multi-year contract. And even though it's this point in the offseason, you don't think you're going to see him. I think both he and the other guy who's really good out there, Steven Nelson, who had to be cut by the Steelers because of salary cap issues there, they're good starters, but they're going to get paid like good starters, and I don't think the Saints can pay either one of them. So you look at a guy like a Kirkpatrick or a guy who seemed to be coming into his own a little bit, who, by the way, played at Ohio State by the name of Garyon Conley, who's been dealing with injury and bouncing back from a significant one. But if he's fully healthy, he was showing signs after being a first-round pick with the Texans that maybe he would make sense. I think they're looking at that end of things, and I certainly think that the Richard Sherman thing is probably sailed because he expects to be paid more than the Saints are going to be willing.
And I don't know how much of a fit he is at this point in his career.
Right.
You know,
more of a zone guy.
Right.
You talk
Exactly.
about the physicality of a guy like Kirkpatrick certainly fits more into what the Saints like to do.
No on-field work or mini camp for mini camp or OTAs. Give me your thoughts on that.
I think there's an understanding now, especially when you're not dealing with that many super young players, although the Saints will be younger this year than they've been in recent seasons, that you can get away with it, keep the union happy, and do a lot of your work through film and players individually going and working out. Because players like a Jameis Winston, one of the big themes of the offseason, he's out in California, even spending his own money to fly Traquan Smith out there, able to work with Adam Troutman, who should be the starting tight end, and other Saints receivers. They're going to do this stuff on their own. They have the playbook. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They're filming their own practices. They're probably sending some of that information to the coaches so you can monitor things and say, hey, change this, tweak that. So you can get away with doing that and deal with this hopefully final pandemic offseason and keep everybody happy. Sure, would they be better off taking full advantage of OTAs on the field and having those 15 mostly, close to 100% together, voluntary practices and a real mini camp? Sure, but I think Sean Payton thought, we were pretty sharp last year. There wasn't that much big of a difference in the product and how we played throughout the course of the season. So being more comfortable with it and not wanting to deal with those other entanglements makes sense. But they'll be back to normal hopefully next year. And any on-field work you get to do with your teammates and your coaches all together would make you a better football team. But most teams around the league aren't doing it, so you're not missing out on too much.
Well, especially when you don't have your quarterback situation really kind of hashed out. You've got some areas where, again, you've got some first-time starters that are coming in. You're trying to find out what you have in a lot of your young players, this would have been the year that I'd want to be on the field.
Sure, I agree with that.
As far as, in previous years, more veteran team, not a big deal.
Right. Think about it, though, with Drew Brees. Drew Brees, especially very late in his career because of the arm strength issues, was throwing the spots.
Yes.
And you better be running the routes the way that they're drawn up,
Yes.
exactly as they're drawn up, or we're going to have problems. Now it's hard to find the Drew Brees type that's so good at that. You're going to see more ad-libbing from either quarterback. You see more arm strength, short and intermediate from them.
Right.
So they're going to hold the ball a little bit longer and throw it a little bit later, and it's simply going to come down to getting that timing right ahead of the regular season. And I don't necessarily think, because both quarterbacks have issues with decision making, with pressure, because they're not Drew Brees, I don't necessarily think you're getting as much out of the regular off season as you'll get in training camp and a little bit in the preseason games.
To your point, we'll find out how good that offensive line is.
No doubt about it.
Okay, I mean, that offensive line was really helped by, again, not only just Brees making line calls, understanding where the ball had to go, but getting the ball out quickly.
And if they're not good enough, especially on that interior where we talked about it, another reason why you don't want to make major changes necessarily, we saw Taysom Hill struggle with stepping up in the pocket consistently, and turnovers would happen, his fumbling problem. We saw the same thing, Jameis Winston under pressure, particularly internal pressure. That would lead to the bigger mistakes that he would make. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on those guys because we don't know if either of these quarterbacks can be trusted over a long season to step up in the pocket and trust the lineman in front
Well,
of
the
them.
linemen have a clock in their head.
Sure.
They know when the ball's coming out for their quarterback. They pretty much have that down. It's a different clock now.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. We're going to the collegiate game. We'll talk about what's going on in college baseball, also in college football, and then we're going to talk a little Pelicans as we end the program. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com and 106.1 FM is our guest today. All right, we'll go to baseball. First of all, we'll talk about LSU, who again came out of the losers bracket to win the Eugene Regional. Your thoughts on the play of that team? Look, they went up a really good pitcher in Jacob against Gonzaga on Friday.
Right.
But you got to give a lot of credit to that team. It is tough to travel all the way to Oregon. And then to be in that situation, and then to have to come out the losers bracket to win a regional.
I would have never guessed if they'd have lost the first game that they could do that with questions about their pitching depth. But they found enough of it and enough of the big bats. This is a team that tends to live more off the home run than the small ball. So all of that came together for them, and you give them a great deal of credit. But I would not have guessed come Saturday, when they were struggling and going to extra innings with Central Connecticut State, that we would see what happen in the next 3 games. But it's all about getting into the tournament and something sparking you at the right time, and you can, if you're LSU with enough talent on the roster, you can do something like that. And I think when it came down to it a little bit is that it was a good matchup in the end for them outside of facing Jacob, the ace for Gonzaga. A really different sort of delivery. I'm not going to call him a junk ball pitcher, but not overpowering. The movement on his pitches are fantastic. And Paul Maneri was clearly terrified of the matchup from the beginning of the week when the bracket came out, because he tinkered with his lineup to try to get more left-handed hitters in against the right-hander. So it just didn't work out. But what they were able to do, and I think the momentum from winning in extra innings probably helped them, because at that point, when DiGiacomo had the game-winning single, the celebration was genuine. It was like, our season's still alive.
Yes.
That might have freed some things up for them that maybe winning that game 12-1 wouldn't have done. Because at that point, when you feel like you can battle adversity and come through it and win a tight game, these are college kids, and you're LSU, and you start thinking, man, if we can get past Gonzaga, just give us a chance at Oregon the next day. And that's what happened, and you got guys stepping up in the rotation, guys who haven't been, who might be a big part of the future, like Javen Coleman. But A.J. Labus pitching his best game in probably 6 weeks or so. That's massive. Just piecing it together and coming up with the big hit at the right time, coming up with the home runs that this lineup, this talented and still pretty young lineup, is capable of doing when they square up pitches. We saw all of that. So it was fun to see. I'm still surprised by it, but at the same time, what was the narrative going in? Lenny Van Gelder of Crescent City Sports wrote a great article saying, hey, this could be Mike Martin 2.0. Longtime coach Mike Martin Sr. in this case. Junior's taken over since. But when Florida State came in and upset LSU in the Super Regionals, that team wasn't even supposed to get out of its regional necessarily, but they were playing for their coach. I think we're seeing this Maneri magic, as it's being referred to now, because these players now want to win for him and they believe that they can.
Let's talk about Maneri. Your thoughts on how he handled lineups? He was criticized for what happened against Gonzaga. Second guessed on what happened against Oregon in the last game on how he handled his pitching staff. But overall, how do you think he did in the regional in terms of lineup card and pitching staff?
Well, you mentioned 2 points in 2 games. There's no question that putting a guy like Will Safford, who hasn't played simply because he played high school ball on turf, the kid was nervous, and it was affecting his ability to throw the ball from second place on easy plays. You could see he was rushing throws he didn't need to, and he really didn't bring you anything in the lineup because he has no power. He's a small guy, and you were hoping he could just put the ball in play. That proved to be a challenge against Jacob that maybe if you'd have gone with your regular guys like a Drew Bianco, it still would have been the same result. So we'll give a pass on that, because I don't think it cost them that particular game. They weren't going to hit Jacob that day. But I will say that they almost blew it on Monday night, because I think Maneri sometimes has a set plan going into games when he uses multiple pitchers, and his inability to feel the game sometimes has affected him in his LSU career. This is a Hall of Fame coach with over 1,500 wins. I'm not bypassing that. He took over a big program and brought it back to where it needed to be. But he's not perfect, so we can point these things out. I don't know why Will Helmers, the freshman out of Jesuit, who was a collegiate baseball All-American named yesterday, why he didn't stick with him when he got 2 scoreless innings from him. I even understand the starter, Mikhail Hilliard, coming back on short rest, only going the 1 inning. But I just didn't like the overall management of it. But he made the key decision at the end. Landon Marceau, once you put him out there, you needed to stick with him. And even though Devin Fontenot's your closer, he had pitched twice in the regional, 37 pitches the day before. You go with your ace. You go with the guy who has the best command on the staff, who isn't going to give up free base runners, who's going to put the pitches where they need to be and give you the best chance to win. He got it right in the end. They were going to have to score a lot of runs to come out of the loser's bracket and win that final Game 7 of a regional anyway. So that's nitpicking at this point. The way the rest of the tournament sets up, if they can stay alive, it's a basic 2 out of 3 weekend in the Super Regionals in Knoxville, and then you get days off in Omaha. So that should be far less of an issue.
My only issue, like yours, I thought he could have stayed with Hilliard for another inning. He only threw 65 pitches in the game.
And 14 in that first inning. You're warmed up at that point. You can't get 15 or so more.
You could have played another inning, at least another inning. Ride him, see how it's going, instead of saying, look, I'm set, I'm going to go freshman, reliever in each inning. Let them go out there and throw as hard as they can. Try to have good location on the pitches, and know that, again, all they got to do is come out and give me 1 good inning. Well, I think it backfired a little bit, because I think it put pressure on those young pitchers.
Now, Maneri didn't say this, But I think part of his thinking was, especially having to go to the younger pitchers in the middle of the game, that he didn't want to have a situation where, let's say, Hilliard comes out second inning and walks the first guy on 4 pitches. He didn't want to bring in pitchers having to deal with base runners. The only guy he did that with was Marceau, because that's the best pitcher on your team. You have to trust him at that point. So I get that line of thinking, but at the same time, I would have tried to stretch it out with my best pitch, my best option other than Marceau that night, starting the game as much as possible, and then maybe played it safer with the younger guys from that point on. Again, we're nitpicking at this point.
We are.
But I did heavily feel the same way, that he didn't handle it the best he could have, and his offense bailed him out.
And I agree with you about Helmers as well. He was pitching well. Stay with him another inning. See how it's going. But I thought, again, he nailed it at the end with Marceau. Look, hopefully it is a learning situation for him going into this Knoxville Regional, because I don't know if those young pitchers were really ready for the moment.
Right, other than Javen Coleman,
who was incredible.
You might see him in long relief at any time, starting with Labus, who, when they played at Tennessee earlier in the year, pitched well. But that doesn't mean that's going to happen again, especially coming off a long outing, 123 pitches. I think Coleman's going to have to play into things and getting into the pitching a little bit more. I don't think Landon Marceau starts game 1. It's got to be Labus. You've got to get him some rest. And maybe if you win game 1, you're willing to hold him to a game 3, if there is one, to try to rest him as much as possible. I would think that's what they're going to do, at least the front end of it, and save him for at least game 2. Other than that, they're going to be able to compress the pitchers that they need, barring some sort of long extra inning game.
All right, they're in Knoxville. It's a Saturday, Sunday, Monday regional. So it helped them. They got a little rest there. Again, not having to go on Friday. Your thoughts on this regional?
I think that the fact that LSU went there earlier in the year, early in the conference schedule when they weren't playing well, and lost 3 close games.
Very close.
2 one-run games and a 2-run game. Any of those could have gone LSU's way. That's a good thing, because they go in there hungrier than just wanting to make the College World Series. They want revenge because of the attitude of the Tennessee team and their head coach, Tony Vitello. And I think a major reason why he's not a candidate is because there was a lot of squawking, there was a lot of staring at LSU players, type of things that made Paul Maneri in particular, and he spoke about it after the series, pretty upset. So I think that motivates the team. Now we get a chance at revenge at with these guys, and we can ruin a dream season for Tennessee because they've been so mediocre to bad for so long. And I think they're just ready to go in there and play their best. The only thing I worry about is the fatigue of Marceau, because it's hard to imagine in the end him not having to have a quality start for you to get out of there alive, because that ballpark in their regional played offensive friendly to a high level in regionals where we saw over 300 home runs total. That was probably as an explosive a regional as there was, other than maybe Oxford. So you're going to need pitchers who can locate. You need pitchers who can get deep into the game, or you're going to have to win slugfest after slugfest. And I think Marceau's the type of guy who can deliver that kind of start. All
right, let's shift gears for a moment to the coaching search. It was reported yesterday that Pat Casey, the former Oregon State coach, is the favorite for the job. This morning, O'Sullivan out of Florida put his name out of contention. Give me your thoughts.
It seems like O'Sullivan was the guy, and rumors and a couple of LSU podcast type, I don't know if we call them media, what do we call it now, seem to have had a feel for the situation, that something happened with the board of supervisors at LSU that may not have approved him. There's some rumors we won't get into about off the field stuff affecting him. Who knows? But the fact that he publicly came out today and pulled out of consideration tells you that he was considering taking the job. I think he was going to take the job. And that I found curious, because yes, he built Florida into a consistent winner. They had some success in the past, certainly, in College World Series appearances, but he made them a power, 7 College World Series over a 10-year span. His roster's all Florida talent, and yet he was looking to leave? That's questionable to me. So this might have worked out best for LSU. At the same time, you've got those potential question marks about him, and Pat Casey, a guy who retired, who said he was burned out.
Yes, was burned out.
62 years old isn't that old. People are overreacting to that, especially with the Vanderbilt, Tim Corbin rumors, maybe also being a target that potentially LSU could get with a big contract. He's 59. Come on. You're trying to win and keep winning right now. The idea that you're going to easily find a guy who's there for 20 years That gets harder and harder in every sport, especially major college or the pros. So forget about that kind of stuff. Just keep the ball rolling at this point. So Casey, hey, he got it done at Oregon State. 3 national championships, built a program from nothing. At the same time, do you trust him, a guy who's an Oregon for life person, born and raised there, only really worked there, to come down south and handle a different situation with a much more rabid fan base, and the issue with Luke Heimlich, his former ace, which makes me wonder when he retired after their 3rd national title in 2018, with Heimlich back on the roster after not playing, being suspended after the news came out about his issue with as a minor with a family member. To me, it's awfully risky because the fan base's reaction through social media message boards, it's mostly bad. They don't care about the 3 national championships. Some are worried about the age, but a lot are worried about that particular issue. The idea of pedophilia being condoned is what some are saying. That's extreme.
And he wasn't forced out of Oregon State because of that.
No, not at all. He chose to step down and saying he was burned out. That might have burned him out quite a bit. The stress on him at that point, although he had said other times during the past he wasn't sure, maybe he was tired. I think he's excited about a new challenge if he takes the job. I think he wins because he's a winner. But at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily best for LSU with all of their Title IX issues in recent years for any kind of stigma like that to be attached to a guy. You don't need that kind of publicity right now just because you think he's the best winner available.
Who's the fallback guy?
That's a good question. I keep coming back to Mike Bianco.
Me too.
It makes too much sense.
It really does.
He's got the support of Skip Bertman. Obviously, I would think that Paul Maneri has a good relationship with Mike Bianco because his son plays for him. Now, that doesn't make LSU fans happy because he simply hasn't won the big one. He's gotten to Omaha once, but he consistently has top 20, top 10 teams. And
he's in the SEC West.
Sure, at the same time he is. And I keep saying this in every sport. It's much harder to win at both Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and neither one of them are winning national titles because you do have to have some sort of talent base from your own state, and those are 2 SEC West programs battling over that talent. So that makes you much more dependent on out-of-state talent than in LSU, where we have a fertile talent pool here in Louisiana for baseball. So that's the history of LSU. More in-state talent to rely upon does make the job easier, but again, I can see Bianco's had enough major league level talent and really good college talent and All-Americans that he probably should have been more successful over 20 years than he has been, and the fan base is going to be relentless about him until he wins in Omaha. So I don't know if they necessarily want that, but it's the safest move. LSU will continue to be a top program, and you'll have somebody that has the support of the 2 most important baseball people in town, your 2 most successful head coaches.
Woodward doesn't seem like the guy that likes to play it safe.
No, not at all. I mean, I think trying to go after Casey isn't safe. I don't think they're going to get Corbin. Corbin's probably going to get a nice raise out of it if Casey does reject the job. If it is indeed, like everybody's reporting, in his lap to make a decision, could be happening as we speak right now. I don't know, but it's a tough deal because in the end, I think they do need to think about something that seems to be important to Woodward, seems to be important at LSU when it comes specifically to the baseball program. That's why Vitello, as opposed to also being maybe a fly-by-night guy until proven otherwise, the Tennessee coach off the table. They want somebody who's going to run the program with class. And one thing you can never question about Paul Maneri, and you never question about Skip Bertman, it was a program that projected class with winning. And that's got to be important because that's a tradition of being maybe the Alabama football of college baseball, the Kentucky basketball of college baseball. It matters.
No doubt. Let's put a wrap on LSU. We'll talk about the football right now just for a moment. James Craig out as the offensive line coach. Brad Davis in, former Arkansas offensive line coach, native of Baton Rouge, went to Bel Air High. Your thoughts on that move and the lateness of the move as well?
Well, everything indicates that there were issues with potential NCAA violations involved with Craig being removed at this point. Especially, we're talking about this happening the week of a major camp on campus, bringing in big-time linemen recruits. So this was not expected, but the swiftness with which Ed Orgeron reacted to the move was made so much easier with a guy with the background of Davis.
Yes.
Davis played at Oklahoma. He's been in the coaching game, coaching offensive line for close to 2 decades. He's been in the SEC at Florida, Missouri, and now Arkansas. He's valued on the recruiting grounds, which is so important. And he's from Baton Rouge, a Central High grad. It just worked out perfectly, and fortunately for Orgeron, because you're making another coaching change, but one that was universally applauded, and I think there's very little doubt it should work out okay. So they're lucky in that case, but another NCAA-related issue, that's the last thing they needed on their
there's
plate.
no doubt. All right, let's shift gears. I want to stay with college baseball for a moment. I want to go quickly. First of all, congratulations to Louisiana Tech, McNeese, Southern, all making the regionals, all out, and they will not be in super regionals. Staying closer to home, your thoughts on Tulane? The fan base doesn't seem to be too happy with Coach Jude right now. It seems like he's going to stay, but again, we'll see how that kind of plays out. His contract is up, from what I understand. Your thoughts?
Well, it seems like we'd have heard something at this point, because coaches that are still alive, even if they're just an assistant, you would have made your move at this point. Maybe we'll be proven wrong, I don't know, but I think that the most important person in this process is the athletic director. He always is, and Troy Dannon looks like he wants to stick with Jewett until we see otherwise. I think when you talk about being a coach of a program like Tulane that's experienced Omaha-level success, consistent regional appearances, and you've got a guy for 5 years that hasn't been able to get that done, that hurts, period, because it is all about winning. But it also hurts that I don't think he's the type of guy that has endeared himself to the fan base, that personality that can get you through. And I'm not saying that's important, but he hasn't really done that. So there's no reason for the fan base to really grab a hold of him with their expectations in that particular sport, baseball, really high uptown. And they should be, because they have a good facility. They have a good history. They should win there. This was a year they really should have taken advantage of it, because the AAC, interesting that the conference does have 2 teams in the super regionals. Overall, it was down. Houston wasn't as good as they have been. Central Florida wasn't as good as they have been. Other than East Carolina being the real monster in that league, it was an opportunity for Tulane to do more than just finish second in the conference, but they completely got blown away in their final series of the regular season at Cincinnati. Had the chance, with ECU faltering, to get through the bracket and still win the automatic bid. Couldn't do either one of those things, and it should be a disappointment. Tulane had enough talent, enough veteran quality pitching, and young talent in the lineup, although it did hurt down the stretch that Bennett Lee, the freshman All-American catcher, was hurt. That still shouldn't have been enough for them to be derailed to the point of getting swept and giving up 10-plus runs in every game at Cincinnati and not being able to take advantage of what was in front of them.
Talk about UNO, Blake Dean, the job that he did this year.
Did a fine job this year. Had some pitching injuries early that really affected them, so the staff wasn't deep, but they still finished second in the conference. The pitching issue wound up hurting them, because they ran into the conference pitcher of the year from McNeese in their first tournament game, Will Dion. They got shut down. As a result, they were never really going to make it, I think, all the way through the loser's bracket. They simply didn't have enough arms, although very disappointing how they lost to Southeastern and not even get a chance to be in the Final Four of that tournament. But at the same time, Dean was able to build a program to win this year in a good baseball league, because a lot of his veteran talent, guys that had been there 3-4 years, they kept getting better in the lineup. Blake Dean, he can create lineups that hit the baseball. That's one thing that's for sure. Pitching's always a challenge the lower you go on the college baseball totem pole. But he got the job done with a team that was mostly built on offense and found enough pitching that UNO fans are pretty happy with what he's done. I think he sticks around for a while, but he, I believe, only has 1 more year on his contract, so maybe we're going to hear more news on that coming up this summer.
Let's shift gears to the Pelicans with the time we have left. What's the plan for David Griffin? Look, the trades and the free agency moves that he's made so far have not worked out.
Right.
It looks like his drafts have worked out. He's got to do a quick about face here.
Sure.
Because he's facing Zion having to get a max deal, his first max deal coming out with, I think, next summer.
He told us his plan. He figured out what everybody figured out from the outside, and a lot of those people did before the season even started. You don't have enough shooting, and he also mentioned you need a higher basketball IQ.
And toughness.
Right, and toughness. So how do you improve in those areas? Toughness is probably the hardest part if you're looking for shooting and basketball IQ.
True.
But at the same time, I think Steven Adams provided enough toughness.
Sure.
But at the same time, he's not a modern big man because he can't shoot from the outside. So you're thinking maybe about trying to dump him from signing him to a contract that's too big.
Right.
You made a mistake by at least $5 million a year, too much. That makes him harder to move.
And extended him for a couple.
And they tried to bring in toughness and leadership in basketball like you not only with him, but the failure that was Eric Bledsoe.
Right.
At the very least, they need to get rid of him and his salary, even though he's essentially on the final year of his deal, and that makes that easier.
Right.
You got to find shooting. But at the same time, if you wind up potentially dumping both of those veterans who were brought in to be leaders, you're back to square one in that area. So that's a major question, and it all comes down to the starting point of the whole offseason. I don't think some sort of major deal, although it could very well happen first because of the timing of a typical NBA offseason. The question is, are you keeping Lonzo Ball? And how much is he going to make?
Right.
Are you paying him?
Right.
Or more than likely, you matching a deal from somebody else, like Chicago, like the New York Knicks.
Or trying to do a sign and trade.
Right. And you want the latter if that happens. But I do think that they actually want to keep him because he's become enough of a volume outside shooter that he fits that particular need. But he doesn't bring toughness.
Right.
That's my biggest issue with him now.
Well, the tough guy is also on free agent, which is Josh Hart.
Right. And he's not as much of a priority because he's not a shooter. So see the balance there.
Yeah.
You've got to find the role players that you can mix and match and fit in the right way. Ball is just so exasperating because he's 6'6" and he plays like he's 6 feet tall. Because he should be somebody who can drive to the basket, get to the free throw line, and he completely avoids it. And the fact that that's an issue with him makes him less of as a point guard, the distributor you want him to be. Because if he's not driving and kicking, even though he does come up with 5 or 6 assists per game on average, then he's not really a point guard, not in the traditional sense. But he's still a valuable asset at a certain price.
Yeah,
I think once you get
him.
maybe, I've seen the idea of maybe 20, 21 million a year. That's still a lot, but that has to be the limit. If somebody wants to go higher, you let him go even if you can't get value back in a sign and trade.
Be interesting to see again how they play this out, especially again when you start talking about trying to move away from some of the mistakes that were made, bringing in those culture-driving veterans, but still having the ability to be able to get some outside shooting, and then to really figure out what you're going to do with Zion as well.
Right.
Because again, point Zion, is that what you're going to do? Is that the direction you're going? We'll see how that kind of plays out. But look, it's coming pretty fast. The draft is just around the corner, and then free agency, and then we'll try to figure out which direction Griffith's going to go. But you've got to get rid of these bad contracts. That's the issue.
And really, at least Bledsoe.
Yes.
If you can get rid of him, that gives you more flexibility, and you should be able to flip him for something asset-wise that can fill another need.
No doubt about it. Jude, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's plenty of ways to be able to catch this program. 6 p.m. on WLAE-TV is our first rebroadcast on Thursday nights. We're on the Deuce. WLAE-TV 2 at 10 p.m. on Thursday. Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television. 10 o'clock right back here on WLAE-TV. 2 a.m. on the Deuce on Saturday morning, and then 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. We're also on all my social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook, also the WLAE-TV YouTube page, as well as ericasher.com. So plenty of ways to catch the program, even previous shows as well. Want to thank also our friend Jude Young for joining us on the program. Remember, you catch both of us on 106.1 FM. I'm on 4 to 6 weekdays. Jude's show is on Thursday nights from 6 to 7, but all access is 6 to 7, Monday through Friday. Also, don't forget, you can check out the radio show also on Anchor, which is our podcasting platform home, but all the major podcasting platforms at ericasher.com, and of course on all our social media platforms as well. Special thanks to the underwriters of this program that make this program happen. Thanks so much to them. Please continue to support our underwriters, and also the great production staff here at WLAE, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Will Ingram, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. For Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.